Does anybody want? Okay, friends, so now we're coming near the end of the retreat. We've been talking quite a bit mostly about the practice of meditation and how to develop mindfulness, and concentration, and wisdom. Then now you're going home and how to actually integrate all of the Noble Eightfold Path into one's daily life. We all know that the Noble Eightfold Path is the fourth of the Four Noble Truths, the path, the way to live, think, and meditate that will allow the mind to unravel the inner tangle and the outer tangle, to disentangle the tangling, and to experience more freedom and well-being from especially our negative habits and thoughts. Anyway, the first step of the Eightfold Path is right understanding. We've talked about that a bit. But there's three levels of right understanding. The first one is intellectual understanding. Let's say, like, for people like me or others who are born in a country where we didn't have really, there was no meditation or Buddhism or yoga or any Eastern spiritual teachings, we knew nothing about it. And then the only way we heard about it was from either some yogi passing through and giving a lecture or reading a book, about Buddhism. And we said, wow, I've never heard this before, that sounds pretty cool, meditation, liberating the mind, and all these things that you read about, and, the Four Noble Truths, about karma, attaining, more expansive states of mind. The hippies in those days, back in the 60s and 70s, they were taking drugs to try to expand their mind, but then these yogis and Buddhist monks came over and started talking about ways to get high naturally, And so that interested a lot of us born back in the day, when we grew up in the 50s and 60s. And, I first found out about the Eastern teachings by taking a class in world religions, because I was planning a trip to go to India, and I thought, well, maybe I ought to study the religions of thought I was going to go through Israel and the Middle East, and India, where I'd be passing through, countries with, Islam and Judaism and Buddhism and Hinduism. So I wanted to learn something about that. So I took this world religions class, and we had to write a term paper on the religion that interested us the most. So for some reason I chose Buddhism. And so I had to write a paper on that. We had to go to the library and do research, but at that time there was only 4 books on Buddhism in the city library. Mid-sized city library, only 4 books available on Buddhism. But anyway, I wrote that paper. It was the first and last one I ever got. I got an A+ on it, by the way. First and last one I ever got. And the teacher said she was impressed with my knowledge of Buddhism. But when I read it years later, I thought, who wrote this? A 5-year-old kid? Anyway, but at that time there was no groups around. There was no yoga centers. There was no meditation centers. There wasn't anything. There was no internet in those days. Nowhere to get any information. So basically, that intellectual interest and understanding of the Buddhism didn't do me much good right then. And I started to go back to, drinking, smoking, getting loaded, going around getting into trouble and mischief and stuff like that. Bringing more suffering and problems in my head. So, and the point was that, just having intellectual understanding of something, especially of the Dharma, is a very limited thing, unless you go on to think about it. And the next level of wisdom is thinking about what you heard or read. You think about it, and you kind of contemplate it. And, as you think, like thinking about karma, thinking about all the problems you got into in your life because of your, greed and attachment and lust and anger or hatred, delusions, and things like that. All the accidents and problems that you brought to yourself or others for not following the precepts, for example. Lying to your parents and stealing, all kind of other things. So when you think about it, and you see the actual harmful consequences that they cause you, it kind of gives you a deeper understanding about the things that you read about, what the Buddha talked about, suffering, the cause of suffering being attachment and craving. There could be an end to suffering. So that what's called the Chintamaya Panya, the wisdom that comes through thinking and contemplating, makes your understanding a little deeper. And then there's right thought, is the second step of the Eightfold Path, which is along the same lines. It's thinking about the Dhamma. And there's three kinds of right thought. The thought of non-greed, or just thinking about, how nice would it be to, not have so much greed and wanting in the mind. Life was much simpler. Or the thought of renunciation means, not being so burdened with so many possessions that you have to worry about, protect, and think about. And people coming over and wanting to steal them and whatever. So to think about lightening up your life without so many burdens. And then the thought of non-ill will, the thought of not having resentment and aversion and anger and hatred toward others, because that's kind of a poison in our mind, and we see how it causes so many problems. And then the thought about non-cruelty, not being cruel to others, and even to animals, and developing a more gentle type of mind, and not being cruel even in our speech, with our speech, or with our body, or even with our thoughts, because it's really heavy stuff that even though we get used to it, we may like to do it. It actually, it causes problems. It even makes the body sick. We all know about psychosomatic diseases and problems like that, and excessive worrying and hatred, all these can damage our own, organs and so on. So anyway, it's thinking about that Dhamma. And that's what I didn't do when I got that initial interest when I wrote that paper. I didn't go on thinking about it because, again, there was nobody to talk to about it, and there was virtually hardly any books. I already read them all in the library. And there was no internet. You couldn't just go on Google and look up Satipatthana Sutta or something else. So, the mind just went back to its old ways. So that's the importance of, that right understanding is kind of gets you excited, to want to practice, but then you have to go on thinking about it for it to cement into your mind. And so the right view and the right thought, these belong to what is called the group of wisdom. The first two steps of the Noble Eightfold Path belong to a category, the umbrella group called wisdom, or prajna. And again, the third level of wisdom, as I mentioned at the beginning, There's the intellectual wisdom. The wisdom comes through thinking. And then there's the deeper wisdom that comes through meditation. That means the deep and profound insights that you get into impermanence and emptiness when you develop your meditation at a deeper level. So, after having, learned about Buddhism, then I left on a trip around the world, and I was staying stoned all the time, and I was getting into, problems because of that, and even got put in prison in Afghanistan for a month for trying to smuggle hashish to India. And I barely got out with my life. And I realized I gotta do something. I gotta, clean my head out. And so, as I was going to India, heading up to Nepal, I stopped at the Sarnath, where the Buddha gave his first sermon in Bihar, in North India. And it was, all these pilgrims were there, and I was. Still, I had the habit of smoking hashish and ganja, and drinking bong lassi and stuff like that. So I was thinking, what did the Buddha say? I was trying to remember what he said. And I know as he said, it shouldn't take intoxicants and do this. I got to get off this stuff, But I was sitting there right in front of the Buddhist temple smoking a joint. That's how addicted I was to that stuff. And then I got up to Nepal, and I was taking a hike in the Himalayas. And I was about 3 or 4 days hike up in the Himalayas, sitting down by a river. And I had taken some LSD that day that somebody had given me, or their magic mushrooms, I think. And I was sitting by the river, kind of tripping. And a guy came down and sat next to me. I didn't know this person. It was just like somebody appeared out of nowhere and sat down and started talking about meditation. And he was talking about this, scanning through the body. He'd just gone to a meditation course, a Goenka course in India, 10 days should be, and talking about, feeling all the atoms and molecules in the body. And my mind was really, gripped by that. And then after he got done talking, he said, I gotta go now. And he said, by the way, there's a meditation course going to happen in Kathmandu. And when he said that, I gotta go there. I gotta do that. That's what I gotta do. And then the guy just disappeared like in a puff of smoke. Not really, but when you're taking acid, it seems like that. And he was just gone. So this guy just comes out of nowhere, lays a trip on me about meditation for about 20 minutes and then just disappears like that. But that grabbed me that the sandals that I'd been hiking in were all kind of falling apart, and didn't have any, and I virtually just ran 3 days back down out of the mountains to go register for this meditation course, because I thought it might get full and I wouldn't get a place in the course. And that's how much I was fascinated by this meditation. And so I got to the course, and to make a long story short, in the middle of that course, I had a profound experience. It just turned my life around. But it was because we were doing all 3 parts of developing wisdom. We had a book that was written by the Lama about various topics: noble truths, suffering, meditation, samsara, greed, hatred, and so on. And so we had to read a chapter in the book, and then the Lama would give a lecture on the same thing. And then we were told to meditate at least 2 meditation periods, just thinking about what we read and what the Lama was saying. So they were, we're getting intellectual wisdom, but then they had us immediately start thinking about it in the meditation. It wasn't just watching the breath like we're doing here. It was actually thinking. You had to memorize a list of different things and actually ponder each one. right view, what is right thought, right speech, right action, and so on. Or what is samsara. And it was like, and each time I did that, it was like another piece of a puzzle kind of be put into place. There was something happening inside. Couldn't put my finger on it, but after 2 weeks, it built up to kind of a crescendo, and I had this. It was like the last piece of a jigsaw puzzle being put into place, and something happened. I don't even know what it was, but it changed my life. And that is from the meditation, the meditation wisdom. So you develop the intellectual understanding, you contemplate it, just by thinking and observing in your daily life, and then in the deeper levels of the meditation, it can create these deep insights. So anyway, I'm just saying that to show how those those three levels of right view are necessary for cultivating those levels of right view, and that's included in the right thought as well, thinking about the Dhamma. Then there's now you have right view and you have right thought. Now what are you going to do? Because what does right view and right thought imply? It means the thought of not harming others and so on. And so the second and third and fourth steps are right speech and right action. It means cleaning up your tongue, cleaning up your mouth. It means how you speak. So those four precepts about speech that we recited last couple of nights, right? Remember that? To avoid from false speech, malicious speech, which means telling tales about others, slandering, backbiting people, then using harsh speech like telling crude jokes or even like ethnic jokes and stuff, belittling people and making fun of people, and then useless speech, because that creates a lot of karma. A lot of suffering comes back to us because of our speech. Anybody have any experience with that? You tell a lie and start worrying about that. People find out even years later, or you've done some other kind of broken precepts. Look at these politicians now, stuff they did 20 years ago, coming back to haunt them, right? And sleeping out with someone, cheating on their wife or husband, or whatever it is, telling lies. Smoking marijuana. You remember Bill Clinton? He got in trouble because he confessed to smoking marijuana 30 years ago. So all these things that we do younger, they come back to haunt us. So the right speech and the right action, that means are all connected with, observing the precepts, most of them. That's why the sila, right speech, right action, and then right livelihood. So right livelihood is the way we earn a living in life. Now, some of you people are fairly young yet. You got your whole lives, ahead of you, so to speak. So it's very important that the right livelihood means having a job or earning your living that's not going to break directly or even indirectly those other precepts. So I think you all know what kind of job that you wouldn't raise animals to slaughter for people to eat, or so some of those, or dealing, of course, with poisons and narcotics, and liquor, selling these kind of things, but more importantly, cheating in business. Cheating in business, lying about your products. These are not harmful. Or fixing your books, like Donald Trump is now in hot water for having fixed his books and fraudulent business deals years ago, and or somebody who wants to be a secretary, something simple, right? So even a poor little secretary working for a big company, trying to keep the books for the spring taxes. The boss comes over and looks over his shoulder and says, "Why don't you change that 50 million to just 5 million?" Said, "What? That wouldn't be honest." And he says, "Well, 10 people are looking for your job. And so they feel, kind of pressured into do something. Or like some of this research that's going on, like Department of Defense or even medicine, where they have to do cruel things to animals, or they have to develop new bombs to kill people with. So these kind of things, also, because you have to go home and sleep at night. The boss doesn't have to. I mean, he does, but he doesn't worry about it. But you, the workers, have to go home and sleep at night, and with a guilty conscience of what you're doing is not all that cool for the harms people, right? So that's why the right livelihood. You do a livelihood, a job, an honest job. You go home at night, you haven't hurt a flea, and so you can sleep well. So that's why the right speech, right action, right livelihood are part of the Sila group, the umbrella group of Sila, which means skillful behavior. Living skillfully in the world, that means living in accordance with the law of karma, not doing things like breaking the precepts and other negative things that are going to bring guilt, worry, remorse, and fear, and people looking for you, put you in prison, whatever. So you have more of a free conscience, because then you'll be able to meditate much easier. Because most of the hindrances that come to you in meditation are due to your past, negative actions and so on. And how many people got disturbed in their meditation because they had some, kind of memory or guilt or worry about, having done something that you shouldn't have done, something like that. Okay. Anyway, so we've covered these first 5 sections of the Eightfold Path. So you clean up your behavior. And so that frees up a lot of your guilt, worry, remorse, and fear, so that you can meditate and not have so many wandering thoughts. You'll be able to concentrate more easily. But the last 3 stages are right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So right effort basically is the effort to do all of the above. The effort to accumulate right view, including the meditative insights and the meditation, which is getting you a deeper right view. And then the effort to cultivate right thoughts that you may not have yet, and to cultivate kindness, generosity, like practicing metta meditation, to cultivate these thoughts of metta and compassion, helping people, do a good deed every day, like the Boy Scouts are supposed to do, and you see an old person walking on the street struggling with some bags, you offer to help them out, and stuff like that, this developing kindness and so on. So the effort to do all of those, practice in that way, in the effort to meditate, the effort to get up early in the morning to actually, meditate before the day gets too busy and so on. And the effort to avoid unseeming places or people that are going to always try to drag you back. Anyway, and then the practice of mindfulness and concentration, which we've already been discussing, talking about. And there's a difference between just the practice of meditation is 3 stages of mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. But wisdom is included in the concentration category, that umbrella group of concentration, which includes right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, but that also includes wisdom. Because there's a little formula, better write it down, that mindfulness plus concentration equals wisdom. But you can't get concentrated without mindfulness, because you've got to be mindful of the hindrances to overcome them so that you can actually attain concentration. So mindfulness gets you centered in the body, gets you attentive to what is happening, to be able to let go of the negative thoughts and actions, and then you get concentrated. Then the concentration is like, boost that mindfulness up, like high octane gas, or boost that mindfulness up, 1,000% in the clarity of the concentration. And that's what allows you then to see clearly and develop that wisdom. Now, there's a lot of people who practice meditation these days, but they do so just to kind of feel good. When they hear about, meditation for stress reduction, meditation for overcoming your anger, meditation for lowering your blood pressure. All these things are good, but I wouldn't call it meditation. Or it's a very, it's not going to go very deep. And that's why the Buddha didn't stop with just, getting concentrated and feel good, as I mentioned before. Some people, they gain that tranquility and they just want to groove, feeling these nice blissful sensations, but it's a dead-end street. It doesn't really go anywhere. And that's why I mentioned that you have to not get trapped in that and then start focusing on observing the flow of impermanence, being able to let go of even, strong sensations and noises, learning how to not react to them in the real world, and then eventually seeing how the ego dissolves when you let go of all of those sensory impingements and seeing the emptiness of the ego. Just the concentration doesn't necessarily do that, or it doesn't wear out the roots of the ego. It might suppress the ego. Now, there's an analogy about this. Now, how many of you know what a jack-in-the-box is? People from India. You know what a jack-in-the-box is? It's a little toy.
Springs out.
Yeah, and what's on the head is the head of a devil, or Mara, or a clown, whatever. But it's it represents greed, hatred, and delusion, the way that a Buddhist would see it. But so if you concentrate just to suppress your thoughts, by just holding on to the tip of the nose and somehow forcing you to forget about everything else and just get absorbed in this deep tranquility, and maybe the mind gets flooded with white light and people are thinking that's God or whatever, and you can stay in that state for a few hours. But when you come out of it, it doesn't necessarily change your ego too much. It's similar to pressing the head of the jack-in-the-box into the box and putting on the lid. Now, what happens when you take the lid off? Because?
You will spring out again.
Why?
Because it's still there.
Because the spring has been compressed, right? So there's a lot of power in the spring. Now, and the head equals the ego. I, look at me. Boing. Greed. So, but in Vipassana, it's like you're going down and you get a pair of wire cutters. And you go down into the bottom of the box and you cut the spring 25% away. You cut through a quarter of the thickness of the spring. by attaining that first stage of, entering the stream. Now, when you take the lid off the box, what will happen? It will still come up, right? But not with so much power as before, with only 75% of its power. Then if you go on meditating and you reach the second level, it's like going in and cutting another 25% of the spring away. So when you take off the lid, the head comes up with only half of its previous power. And then the third stage, you're cutting another 25% away. And in the last stage, with the stage of the full enlightenment, or what's called the arahantship, the destruction of all the defilements, even the last trace of an ego, when you take the lid off, nothing comes up. You cut through the last bit of the spring. So when you take the lid off, nothing comes up. And so that is the analogy between simply just concentrating to gain a little peace of mind and not to be disturbed for things for a couple of hours, as opposed to sitting through the chaos and learning how to calm your mind in the midst of chaos, and to understand how all that chaos is basically empty and the mind lets go. Instead of suppressing it, the mind lets go. That's a difference. When you just concentrate, you suppress the defilements because you haven't understood them, and then they come back up again and you don't know how to deal with them, except for just suppressing or running away from them. But in Vipassana, you sit in the middle of it, you invite them, come on noises, come on pain, come on bad smells, come on thoughts, but you use your wisdom to say, I see you. You're anicca, you're dukkha, you're anatta. You're empty of any concrete, absolute values. And that's the difference. And without refeeding them, they gradually, over a long period of time, not quickly, they start getting weaker and weaker and then, dissolving. And then even the sense of the ego and the self. And you see that is ultimately the deepest level, because all other things exist because of the ego. We have greed because of the self. We want to satisfy the I, me, and mine, and its craving for sensual pleasures, or becoming a billionaire or whatever. And but you get the more happiness when the mind is free from all that. You become, what's called the paramam sukham. Actually, nibbana is called paramam sukham, beyond happiness. Because whenever you think about happiness, you're going to have pain, because these are two dualities. So therefore, as a Buddhist, we don't try to be happy. I was a monk in Sri Lanka for a long time. And people know I've been a monk now for almost 48 years. So they ask me, are you happy? Because they think, I can't go out with women, I can't drink alcohol, I can't go to the movies, all these things, right? So are you happy? And I tell them, I'm not unhappy. Because people have a warped idea of what happiness is. They think it's, with a big stomach going up and down. That's not happiness. That's maybe just pleasure and joviality, but it's not what we would call real happiness. The real happiness is the freedom from wanting, because then there's nothing to get rejected by. Whenever there's wanting, there's a fear of losing what you want, or not getting what you want, getting what you don't want, and getting what you don't want. That is one of the Buddhist definitions of suffering. So anyway, just mentioning that just to kind of try to make clear that difference between just practicing concentration for the sake of getting some peace of mind, as opposed to going on to develop the insight. But that phrase that I mentioned at the end of meditation, there's no meditation, no concentration without wisdom. And that the meaning of that is that if you just practice the meditation without the wisdom, it's only going to bring you a very limited amount of benefit. But when you go on to cultivate, but you need the concentration, the wisdom's not going to come out without the concentration. So that's why there's no wisdom without meditation. There's no, meditation without concentration. And that's why concentration is mentioned first before the right concentration leads you to the edge of the cliff. So let's say you're walking along a path and all these obstacles, in the way, robbers and villages and this and that, and you're able to dodge them. And you get to the edge of the cliff, the concentration, you get to that point of the abyss. And the next thing is you got to jump because the robbers are chasing you. And jumping off the cliff means dissolving the ego. Take the plunge into the unknown. That's why a lot of people get scared with meditation, because it feels like you're going to die when the ego starts dissolving and everything that's familiar to your thoughts and everything starts dissolving, like that Alka-Seltzer tablet dissolving in water. That's people panic because they haven't understood that that's a natural part of the process. So people with big egos will find it very difficult to meditate. And that's why the wisdom is there, the right understanding, so that you know that when these things happen, okay, it's meant to happen. Don't get excited. And you can kind of just flow into it without so much fighting and fear and worry and so on. Okay? So that's sort of the Eightfold Path. Now, before we finished, I wanted to talk about how to practice in the daily life. Now, some of you come, and how many people got a little bit, enthused and kind of re-sparked their interest to want to meditate? How many of you, thinking, how are you gonna meditate the next, couple of weeks? I'm gonna do 20 minutes of yoga. 20 minutes, 30 minutes of meditation, in the morning and evening, right? So you got your schedule all worked out. And then when you get home, maybe you'll do that for the first couple of days when it's still fresh in your mind. But then you get caught up in work, and you have to, somebody worked your shift over Thanksgiving, and now you have to work somebody else's shift, and you get tired. The first thing that happens is the evening meditation gets left because you're too tired at the end of the day. You just want to crawl into bed, watch a horror movie or something. And so then you might continue the meditation in the morning for a little bit longer, and some weeks or goes on, but little by little, your 45-minute meditation drops down to 30 minutes. Another week later, the 30-minute meditation drops to 15 minutes. And then before you know it, you're going out the door, swigging down your last bit of Joe, coffee, and you pat the Buddha on the head and you say, Namo Buddhaya, you meditate for me. That's all your meditation. Oh yeah. Sound familiar? Okay. So what's to be done? This is a real thing, because I've known people, some of my students from 30 years ago, they tell me this, that's what happens to them. And they use a retreat as a crutch. And every year they got to go on a retreat. Every 6 months they got to go on a retreat. to restart their practice. So, sure, it's difficult to, especially again if you live alone. So it's good to have a group you can go to, like you guys have that group in Washington. You can go to at least every Sunday. There's going to be a solid group time of meditation, right? Or you can come here and meditate. So it's good if you live near a center, even if you have to drive 30 minutes. That at least once a week or so, there's a place where you'll at least get in a meditation. Or come to a weekend program like a day of mindfulness, or this kind of weekend retreats, right? So it's but a lot of people don't have that, live near centers and stuff like that. But of course, there is a Zoom now, and you can get anything you want at Alice's restaurant, right? I mean, get anything you want on Zoom, so that's good. But anyway, apart from that, so we've developed a new kind of practice. It's not new now, but it's called an M&M. It's called a minute meditation. People hear that and say, a minute meditation? Oh, that's nice. I think I do a minute. But it's a specific practice in which you train yourself to stop every hour for 1 minute. Because normally during the day, even if you meditate, 30 minutes in the morning, usually by 2 or 3 hours later, depending on what kind of a job you have, the effects of that morning meditation are going to wear off. Especially if you have jobs where you have to go to a lot of meetings, you have to talk to a lot of people, and you're under pressure to get things done. So, you'll lose that effect of the morning meditation normally. And then the evening is good to help to practice forgiveness. So if you do a longer evening meditation, to practice forgiveness and metta for anybody that might have crossed you, or just you see people suffering during the day, and just develop this kind thoughts, or practice metta, compassion in the evening, so that you could sleep better. Or to practice forgiveness, to forgive anybody that might have, you thought, crossed you or did something to you, and forgive yourself if you might have done something that annoyed somebody else, so you don't carry these kind of guilty feelings or resentment in your mind. So that's how those two kind of longer meditations are very compatible. In the morning, you practice mindfulness to set up mindfulness for the day ahead. So you're more aware and alert, and maybe in touch with the body. And then in the evening, meditating again, but at least practicing some form of, as I just mentioned, to let go of any thoughts and spread out, radiate metta. Now the M&M, so it's a training where you stop every hour for 1 minute. Now there's apps that you can have, that get you to make a sound, or alert you every minute, or beep every hour, or you can set it, at any time you want. But you set it for every hour. And then when that happens, you stop what you're doing, kind of freeze in your tracks. And just take a deep, slow breath. Take a deep, slow breath. That was kind of your suggestion. Bring the attention to the body. And hold the air in the lungs for 3 or 4 or even more seconds. Because you can't really think when you're doing that. It takes all of your effort to do that, and it also feels quite nice. And then by the time you've let out your breath, you might have forgotten about what you were intending to rush to, or whatever you were thinking about before, some worry or something. Just stay in that for 1 minute, just remembering, just standing, breathing, sitting, breathing, whatever position you're in, and take 2 or 3 breaths. That's already 1 minute. Just taking 2 or 3 of the 3-part breaths. But it does really help you to relax and to regain your center, so to speak, especially if you get in touch with the body. Then you can, at the end of that minute, you can tell yourself, okay, now, don't rush. Continue doing what you were going to do, but hopefully you'll be a little bit more mindful, at least for another 30 minutes or so. But you do that every hour. You kind of it's like a mini charge, right? That's what they talk about now, mini charges for your cell phone. Well, this is a mini charge for our mindfulness. And the best times to do that, or if you have to go in to talk to the boss about a raise, or talk about somebody who's trying to steal your job, or telling lies about you, or plagiarizing your work, or whatever, to prep yourself. Okay, whatever happens in there, let me not get angry, let me not lose my temper using bad speech, and kind of prepare yourself. Or you have to go in and talk to your kids or your roommate or something about leaving a mess in the house, or some other kind of things that annoy you, where there could be the potential for arguments, especially with your children. If you got teenagers in the house, undergoing puberty and so on. That's a big one. Parents have to struggle with. So anyway, you prep yourself whenever you have to go in. That there's a potential for. And you take a couple of deep, slow breaths, practice an M&M, and just remind yourself. And stay in touch with the body. That's why mindfulness of the body is one of the best practices, one of the best overall practices to do. Because we always have it with us, for one thing, and it's always right here anytime you just, oh yes, standing, breathing, sitting, breathing, walking, breathing. And especially the deep, slow breaths is a way to almost instantly, come back, and all your Dharma understanding will kind of crystallize in that, those few seconds or a minute. Then you continue what you were doing. And then there's other times too. You only got 5 minutes, even just 10 or 15 seconds here or there, waiting in line somewhere. Doctor's office, people are looking around, or looking through magazines, criticizing somebody else's clothes or hairdo or whatever. We just let our mind, wander. But even those, just, whenever you're in a place, or while you're riding the subway, or even in your car, you come to a red light, you got 30 seconds before it turns green. Instead of looking around, oh, there's a new Mercedes. Oh, I want one of those. Just keep your eyes in your head. Just feel your hands on the wheel, feel the buttocks on the seat. Just you're sitting, hearing honking horns or whatever, hearing. You can have fun practicing Dhamma. We gotta make Dhamma fun. We have to know how to make it fun. A lot of people think it's a dredge, Oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. This and that. I can't listen to music. So there's other ways of making it fun. So you're standing in line at the checkout counter at the grocery store. Or you're heading for that line of 10 items or less, right? And there's a lady with a big basket with 30 items in there, wanting to cut in line in front of you. And you see your reaction, right? Instead of getting angry, you realize, she's got 2 toddlers there, they want to get home. Give them a break, go ahead, go for it. Practice compassion. Or, the cashier standing there all day on the cashier, her legs are paining, and her tape machine breaks. There's a malfunction, people getting, impatient. Send metta. Instead of getting impatient yourself, send metta. And you'll all be well enough. Free from suffering. So we can make it fun and take advantage of those few brief little moments here and there. And because that's where it counts. You create most of your karma out there on the street, interacting with people. That's when we need our mindfulness the most.
Can you politely and kindly tell her she should go to the other line? With metta?
You go to the other line.
But I have less than 10, she's got 30.
No, they'll get angry.
No, I'm angry.
No, they'll get angry
Oh, they'll get
if
it.
you repeat. Because we see that happening all the time. Don't tell me what to do. I got 3 kids. But other people are not practicing Dhamma. You're practicing Dhamma. We can't expect other people to be practicing Dhamma because they're not, most of them. We have to practice. And that's what we need to learn to do. And you're standing there in a checkout line. Then you see all these magazines, tabloids, in the rack on the side. Then you catch your eyes, looking over there, and you see a headline. Michael Jackson was really wonderful. So keep your eyes in your head. Don't let them wander around. You go into a grocery store, you know what you need. Don't let your mind wander around and just buy stuff that you don't need. Just go in, get it, go out. And you get out of your car in a parking lot, practice a little mindful walking instead of rushing into the store. Always give yourself more time to get someplace so you don't have to rush. That's what's really important. When I go to the airports, I always like to go early. And I do walking meditation down the long corridors of the airports, right? Toward the gates. And I'm walking, doing the Vipassana shuffle. Kind of lifting, placing. Not zombie-like, maybe what we're doing here, but kind of a middle path. But people are whizzing by, they're whizzing by. And the people coming this side, they're also whizzing by. And so the lady coming by, she's got 2 kids, and they see me in the distance. Mommy, what is that? She says, don't look. So I hear it, I kind of chuckle to myself. Have fun with the Dhamma, right? Have fun. You make it fun. But if you're rushing, you can't have fun because you're worrying about getting late and missing appointments. So you have to manage your time. That's the thing. Then you can be more relaxed. So all these things are aspects of how to practice the Dhamma in the daily life to minimize stress, because everyone's affected by stress these days. But the stress is created by their own minds because they don't know how to manage their time properly, or they just overreact to things, creating worst case scenarios, and like that. So, these are all aspects of So having said all that, does any of you have any sort of last questions about any of that you might like to ask? Yes.
One day you mentioned Vipassana. Is that like a special kind of meditation, or what we did was that Vipassana?
Yes. Vipassana is basically the meditation that uses the body and the breathing to develop their concentration. There's different techniques of Vipassana, but really the Buddha is teaching to the 4 foundations of mindfulness. That is the real Vipassana. All these specialized courses like Goenka courses or Mahasi Sayadaw courses, these 10-day retreats, these have just been specially crafted to be taught in large groups and can be taught quite easily. But they all those techniques basically come from the different sections of Satipatthana Sutta. But they're limited. But they're a good place to start.
Bhante, what did you do different walking in the airport compared to what we do here? You call it zombie meditating.
The Vipassana shuffle.
Yeah.
I mean, instead of being really focused on just, lifting, swinging, placing, kind of, walking real slowly, you're walking a little bit faster, but not the normal speed. Where most people, they're focused on, the gate, the gate, their name was called at the gate, the gate's closing, and so, Mr. Joe, the gate's going to close and they're rushing. And so you give you enough time so you don't have to rush. You can walk slowly, and it's a speed I call the Vipassana shuffle, and it's basically you might have seen me walking from place to place sometimes, and fairly slowly. That means you can feel the movements, and kind of the mind can be more in the present moment. You're not kind of focused on a place to go, so your mind is more in the present moment, and you're relaxed, basically.
With awareness, walking with.
Yeah, but not detailed awareness, just an open, relaxed awareness. Any other questions? So, all right. I'm glad that you all could come to this retreat, and I hope you all got some benefit from it. I think most of you did get some benefit from it. But again, it's about the real work comes now. You have to go home and you have to integrate it into your daily lives as best you can. And you have to, each person has to kind of create their own life situation depending on their values and their things. You can do that.
Thank you.
So I think you all are all of you on our mailing list. Are you on our mailing list? Every week, usually on Mondays, I send out an email telling about our Wednesday evening Zoom programs and our other monthly meditation sessions. You're getting that? All right.
So let's chant with respect to Bhante. We're chanting sadhu 3 times. Okay.
Now, there's one last thing. If you would like, these are spirit mules, and these are kind of like, you could say good luck charm, but it's a kind of, these are common in the Buddhist tradition. It's tied around a person's wrist, kind of like as a protection from evil spirits or vibrations, and because these have been with us when we meditate, so they're sort of the ideas that they're charged with the positive vibrations and so on. And you've accumulated a lot of merit by spending this weekend in meditation. I mean, you could have gone to your families and drink wine at Thanksgiving and get in arguments about politics or religion with your relatives, like a lot of them do. But instead, you came, you could have gone to Belize on a warm beach or something, but you came here to spend this time meditating. So that's you sacrificed whatever presumed other pleasures you could have done. Of course, you could have gotten drunk and drove on the freeway and gotten a crash and maimed yourself or killed somebody else too. But anyway, you came here and you practiced meditation, were calm and quiet, and not indulging in a lot of pleasures and entertainments. So if you'd like to have one of these spirit mules, you can come up and I tie it on to usually it's